Even for Kagenou, of all the famed heroes and warriors of the past that could have been summoned in the goddess trial, he never would have imagined that a former member of the League, the one known as Batman the Betrayer, would emerge. The Bat stood silent, with sword to his side, the Witch of Calamity, Aurora, standing behind him. However, as the two combatants prepared to duel, those sitting amongst the crowds in shock and awe, none more so than Wonder Woman and Owlman. Owlman, to be specific, because his worst fears were being realized. He never even considered that this could have been a possibility. Everything he'd worked for, all those years of planning, they could all go to waste in this very moment. He knew that he had to pick his words carefully. His actions, everything was riding on this moment. Taking a course of action, he would immediately escort Helena out of there, telling her to help with the evacuation and to get everyone to safety. Of course, Helena was also at a loss for words. Her father had now been brought back from the dead, the man who was spoken of in ill, a man who was considered a traitor to his country and to his people, a man who had the destruction and the deaths of millions upon his head. And yet that was still her father. She wanted to yell to him. She wanted to rush to him, but her uncle wouldn't allow it. Both Helena as well as Cassandra were sent on escort duty and evacuation. Diana turned to Thomas Wayne Jr. in that moment, asking what they should do. Isn't it obvious? An enemy of the state has appeared. I say we kill two birds with one stone. Or rather, obliterate two birds with two meteors. Both Wonder Woman and Owlman would jump down into the arena, standing behind DeathStroke. Well, it seems I've finally gotten your attention. Yes, and you might not like that you have, Diana said. In the name of Midgar, and on behalf of the people of Lindworm, you are under arrest, DeathStroke. Diplomacy. But come on, let's be for real now. We all know that behind that diplomacy, it's nothing but fakeness. Tyranny is your company, and betrayal, that is your ally. Betrayal? Betrayal to what? Betrayal to everything that you stood for. This is nothing but a mere execution. At least, that's what you hope it'll be. You hope that I'll keep quiet. And you wish to silence the Batman. In all this time, the Bat had said nothing, merely observing his surroundings, not even paying any attention to his elder brother. Without warning, Owlman would engage with the Batman, while Wonder Woman would engage with Deathstroke. Aurora, the Witch of Calamity, simply watched on. As for her, the wheels of fate continued to turn. And to where it would lead, that only time could tell. Safe to assume, the goddess trial was over. However, the chaos that ensued, that was only just the beginning. For, in the midst of the evacuation, Archbishop Nelson would be taken in by Shadow Garden, as they led within the sanctuary. Kagenou noticed this immediately with Alpha and the others. It seemed that they had been on to something as well, and looking into the Archbishop no less. The only downside is that because of Shadow Garden's actions, This incurred the intrigue of Alexia, who, alongside Princess Rose, and along with Natsume, aka Beta of Shadow Garden, still undercover, would follow close behind. Iris would have been against her sister getting involved, but she was too busy helping with the evacuations as well, and trying to maintain whatever order that she could, alongside Terra and Beast Boy. In the midst of the fighting, Kagenou would decide to descend into the sanctuary, along with the Bat and Aurora, who quickly followed, Wonder Woman and Owlman giving in chase, as the doors to the sanctuary closed behind them, as the Colosseum continued to rock and turn, as many civilians began running towards safety, and others trying to make sense of the things they had seen. Within the sanctuary, many different groups would splinter off. Shadow Garden, along with their prisoner, Archbishop Nilsson. There was Kagenou, along with the Batman and Aurora. And then there was Owlman and Wonder Woman. Each group looking for the other, not knowing what to expect, as the sanctuary was a gateway to many realms, the secrets long since buried. Of course, for the Archbishop, he did not expect to be here so soon, and even more so to be in the clutches of some rather unsavory individuals. Alpha was not playing around as she tugged him along, dragging him through the sanctuary and the secrets that dwelled within them. Much to the Archbishop's dismay, Alpha would force him to reveal the truth of what they had uncovered. The death of Archbishop Drake wasn't by coincidence, because you see, Archbishop Drake, a kind soul, had gotten too close to the truth. For Shadow Garden, the first group they encountered was the group of Alexia, Natsume, and Rose. There was a bit of a standoff between the two sides. Shadow Garden had been weary of those related to the crown, Alpha in particular. And for Alexia, well, she wasn't too trusting of Shadow Garden, given their dealings with the cult of Diablos. However, Alpha would have everything revealed in due time, as she forced the Archbishop to reveal everything she had learned. Being held at sword point, and with nowhere to run, he figured he might as well enlighten the fools before they die. After all, when at death's door, that is the most common of courtesy that you can give someone. And thus, the true story would be revealed. "What is the meaning of this?" Alexia asked. "Why have you taken Archbishop Nelson?" "Because," Alpha would tell her, "he is the one that knows the truth." "The truth of what?" "Of the sanctuary and of the cult of Diablos. It's always been him." "What do you mean?" "Pesky little worm, that is what you are. I remember you. Yes. This too is divine fate, that you should all be gathered here in this very moment." "What is he talking about?" "Archbishop Nelson, what is the meaning behind this? The sanctuary. What do you know about the death of Archbishop Drake?" Alexia drew her sword as well, not sure of who she should strike first, who should be friend and who should be foe. Was it Shadow Garden? Was it the person that she had been targeting this whole time? She had no way of knowing, and yet still, the truth is what lay before her. "There's no point in leaving you in ignorance, Your Highness. If you wish to know the truth, then you must know the beginnings of the world. Long ago on this planet, there were two continents. One was a continent known as New Genesis, home to a race called the New Gods. The other, the continent of Apocalypse. The two continents were home to powerful beings, races of gods. They engaged in conflict. The age-old light and darkness. You could say that they were the beginning of the world. The war raged for thousands of years, but it came to its ultimate climax a little over 1,000 years ago. There was a warrior named Oliver. Yes, we know of him. The warrior Oliver, who was said to have severed the left arm of Diablos. Yes, that is the truth. But what you don't know is the hero's last name. Midgar. Midgar? My family name? What are you getting at? If it's too hard to realize, then you truly are lost, child. You are a descendant of Oliver. You, your sister, your family. And there are others also. The bloodline stretched far and wide. Long ago, there was a god of evil and destruction, the order and master of chaos. That being's name was Diablos. Diablos was so powerful that it took many of the power of the new gods to defeat them, many of whom were killed. But at the cost of their lives, they achieved the impossible. Pulling what power and strength they had, the continent of Apocalypse began to rise. They lifted it higher and higher and higher until eventually it escaped the view from the surface of the earth, and it was cast out into space. Apocalypse drifted off far and farther away. And for many, they thought that that was the end. The great war between New Genesis and Apocalypse came to a close. It was believed that all evil was expelled from the earth. But there were those that remained, a select few that took up the will of Diablos and became the cult of Diablos. However, our numbers were small. We had to gather our forces, convert others to our side. And sure enough, we managed to do so. Eventually, we performed the calling, a ritual that would allow for us to bring Apocalypse back to its original home, the floating continent in darkness. And to our delight, the army of Apocalypse had grown. It had magnified. Steppenwolf had survived. And that led to the Great War. So you're saying that the cult of Diablos, they called the army of Apocalypse back to Earth? Yes, child. Indeed we did. But of course, much had changed by then. Long gone were the days of simply knights and noble warriors. No, we had now entered into an age of heroes. the heroes fought against the army of Apocalypse. But the tide in battle turned, for there was a hero among them, a hero that gave us the keys to defeating the Justice League. You mean Batman the Betrayer, Alexia said. Precisely. It was through him that we gained the upper hand, even managing to destroy Metropolis. But even that wasn't enough. For all of our strength, we couldn't overcome him. And eventually, the great forces of Earth managed to repel the army of Apocalypse. But since then, we have changed our tactic. What we have been looking for. A chance to rebirth a new God. A new seed. A being through whom its birth will bring back the age of Apocalypse. To return us to our glory. And to destroy you heroes. The way you speak, Alexia said. You speak as if you've seen this firsthand. But of course, Archbishop Nelson would take a vial of pills from his pouch as he consumed its contents and began to transform into his demon-like state, producing multiple clones of himself all at once. I have existed since the beginning. I served the army of Apocalypse. I was one of the first cornerstones for the cult of Diablos, and I am all that remains. For all of my brethren that have fallen, I live for their revival, and through the assistance of the one that guides us, the age of Apocalypse shall befall the earth. Through the birth of the new God, he will be the one to bring the era of darkness. Thus saith in the name of Darkseid. Who is Darkseid? Alexia asked. It's the name of the new God that they wish to birth into this world. But it will never come to be. Alpha would draw her sword as the other members of Shadow Garden prepared for battle. This is the end for you, your reign of terror, your evil, your ambitions. They all die here. Through the will of Shadow Garden, through the one that guides us, the cult of Diablos will be extinguished, and your new God will never be born. You cannot defy fate. Using his power, multiple members of Shadow Garden would be taken to different parts of the sanctuary. In the meantime, Kagenou would continue to traverse through the sanctuary alongside with Aurora and the Batman, whom he had briefly engaged in combat. Of course, he was left with more questions than answers, as he came to learn of Aurora's place in the sanctuary, learning that her spirit and consciousness had been imprisoned here, trapped for thousands of years. And it was thanks to Sid that she was able to be set free. The sanctuary functioned as a massive prison that stored the memories of past heroes. And the only way to destroy the sanctuary was through its magical core. Although in the process, the memories of Aurora and the others would be deleted forever. As Kagenou came to learn more of the sanctuary and his place in it, there was a conversation that needed to be had. He turned to the bat who had been silent the whole time, almost in a brooding state. Before I progress any further, me and the Bat need to have a conversation. I've only read your story, but I want to know the truth, and I want to know it from you. Did you actually betray the Justice League to the army of Apocalypse? Because that's what they say. However, I believe that there's a different story at work, and you're the only one who can tell me. At first, the Bat said nothing, which had Kagenou rather concerned. Would this prove to just be another dead end? Was there nothing that he could say? Or was he really just a husk of the hero that he once was? Finally, however, he began to speak. The League changed. It changed. How did it change? What the League once stood for, it changed. It happened during the war. We were losing. The army of Apocalypse had gained the upper hand. I warned against it. They wanted to work with the super criminals, believing that if both sides worked together, it could be for the betterment of Midgar and for the world. At first, I tried to see the logic behind it. However, there were many more forces at work. Someone had been manipulating the system for all of this to happen. The war, everything. It didn't happen by chance. By chance. The cult of Diablos, the ones responsible. The cult had not been operating on its own. The cult was receiving help from the inside, from our camp. I see. A situation involving a traitor. The traitor was responsible for Barry's disappearance, for my contingencies being leaked to the army of Apocalypse, the destruction of Metropolis. It was all due to this betrayer. And I take it you know who this betrayer was? It was my brother. Now that I did not expect, Kagenou would say. So, the Owl Man has been working with the cult of Diablos and was responsible for the destruction of Metropolis. Manipulating the League is what he has done. And why didn't you tell them? Before I had the chance to. He was killed, Aurora said. Before he even had a chance, he was killed. He was branded as a traitor, branded as a criminal by his country, hunted down and killed. Oh. Well, now this makes sense. I can tell from your own memories and from your own experiences, Aurora would say. Are you starting to have misgivings about the Justice League? I wouldn't say that at all. It doesn't change the fact that they've gone down the course that they have, but it does put things into perspective. So Owlman's the one that I need to hunt down. With him, I'll find the truth. But what could he be after? To manipulate the League into killing you and starting this whole war, fabricating it. That's where I'll find the true answers. Before long, Kagenou, Aurora, and Batman would reach the sanctuary's core. The core was sealed behind chains that could only be cut by a nearby magic sword. Despite his efforts, Kagenou could not draw it, for only a descendant of the hero could pull it. At that moment, Archbishop Nelson would arrive. Using his power, he would retake control of the Batman, forcing him to engage in combat against Kagenou. As Kagenou fought against him, he tried to speak reason with the Bat, trying to get him to break free. However, Nelson's power was far greater than one could have expected. But they weren't the only ones to reach the core of the sanctuary. For Beta, aka Natsume, along with Rose and Alexia would arrive, just in time to see DeathStroke in heated sword combat against the Batman. The demonically empowered Archbishop Nielsen, in complete control, ready to destroy them all, and to continue the work that he had started long ago. While continuing his fight against the Batman, and while trying to use what little magical power that he had, seeing as how the sanctuary, similar to the Eye of Avarice, was absorbing and cutting off his magic, forcing him to have to condense it down into a heavy-like state just to be able to maintain and use it to its fullest capacity. In the meantime, Aurora would instruct Alexia to pull the hero's sword, the only thing capable of cutting through the chains of the sanctuary, releasing its power and destroying it completely. Alexia, much to her own surprise, was capable of pulling the blade, but through the recent revelations of learning of her family lineage, it shouldn't have come as much of a shock to her. With a fighting and mighty thrust of the blade, the chains would be severed and cut, releasing the core of the sanctuary. This would soon result in a self-destruct, as Kagenou would tell all of them to get out of there. With the newly enchanted sword in hand, Alexia would turn back to the DeathStroke. She wasn't sure of what to make of him. With everything she had learned, with every new revelation that came about, her trust in the system, her trust in herself, the trust that she had in others, it continued to wane over and over again. Of course, with the ground and everything about shaking around them, they didn't have much time to argue, and with that they would take their leave. As Kagenou continued to fight with the Bat, he saw an opening and took it, striking him down instantly as he fell. But he wasn't done just yet, because Kagenou had left himself open as well, and the Bat immediately went to take him down, much to Nelson's delight, believing that he had finally gotten rid of that pesky annoyance, the DeathStroke, and soon enough, his shadow garden would fall with him. However, there was one thing that Nelson did not calculate: the spirit of the Batman. The Batman had been a lot of things, and he did a lot of things, but there was one thing that he would never do. He would not kill. The strike he landed was fatal, but not so much to his life, though it appeared that way. The two of them had actually been working along this entire time. They merely had to buy an opportunity for Kagenou to unleash his true power. For under his mask, through the single visible eye hole, the color of his eye began to change. The color emitting an irradiating aura of violet. As Kagenou would stand back to his feet once again, He had used the compressing of his own magic to create a solid mass within his eye, allowing for it to be unleashed with his atomic bomb spell. Using the atomic, he would destroy Nelson and the sanctuary's core permanently, bidding farewell to Aurora, giving her the peace that she had longed for. However, the spirit and the vestige of the bat was not done with him yet. Is there anything else you want to say to me? I know about how you lived. You probably don't condone my actions, and to be quite frank, I really don't give a damn. Even if the League were being manipulated, they have committed a great deal of sins since, including taking my life. That's something I can't just easily let go. So with all due respect, I am going to take down the League, and in whatever way, shape, or form that comes with it. I'm not here to stop you, nor am I here to sway you. Every man must walk his own path. That includes you, Kagenou. What you choose to do with your life is yours and yours alone. I only ask one thing. Please, protect my daughter. I see. The final wishes of the father. Simple enough request. I had no intentions on taking her life to begin with. I can't say what side she'll ultimately be on, and if she chooses to be troublesome, I will take the necessary actions. But you have my word. I will not take your daughter's life. With that, the Batman would give him a bow of respect as he took his leave to the afterlife. As for the rest of Shadow Garden, they had dealt with the clones of Archbishop Nilsson, destroying what was left of him and the research from the cult of Diablos in that base. But they knew that this was just the beginning. Shortly after, Kagenou found himself riding on a train cart back home. The back cart had been privately reserved for both he and Alexia, the two of them sitting side by side as Kagenou looked out of the window, the sun setting across the farmlands, as they traversed through the barrier between Lindworm and Midgar before they were heading back to the capital, back to Midgar Academy. Alexia had a lot on her mind, and Kagenou could tell for obvious reason, and he decided to break the tension by asking her, I can tell by that look on your face, you have something that you're up to, aren't you? I just have a lot to think about, Kagenou. Among many things, the fact that I can't get where I need to go the way I am now. And what do you mean by that? Isn't it obvious? The only thing that matters in this world is power. The more you have of it, the more influence you have, the farther you can go. That's why I need to get on top of things. I plan on becoming the leader of the Crimson Knights. The Crimson Knights? To get into the head of that organization, it's not for the faint of heart, but it does have its advantages. I won't be climbing the ranks alone. You're going to be climbing with me. Me? Why me? I barely even qualify to be a student at Midgar Academy. There's no way I'm going to. Kagenou. She grabbed his cheeks playfully, giving off the smile of, I'm the one in charge here. You're going to do as I say, and you're going to like it, sweetie. For Kagenou, he had to keep up the ruse. But if there was one thing he could say among his likes of barely likes and the things of his dislikes and barely dislikes, if there was one thing he could at least like in anyone, it was someone who was confident enough to know what they wanted and to actually be about it. Too much in any world that you go to, there are always people who can talk a big talk, but they can never walk that walk. Alexia was not one of those people. Sure, she wasn't the strongest, and she'd probably be the first one to tell you that. But at the same time, she wasn't someone so naive enough to give up on a dream. She was willing to put in the work to achieve what many would consider impossible. And that was indeed a trait worth admiring. And may I ask, why exactly do you want this? I need to move up higher in terms of political power. Sure, I might be the princess, but in the grand scheme of things, being a princess doesn't get you as many privileges as you might think, outside of the mundane like cutting a line to a pastry shop or something like that. Frivolous in the grand scheme of things. I'm talking about having real power, the power to do my own investigations without going through much legality. You know, you'll still have to answer to your sister in the 12 Nights of Round, and there's also the Justice League. But that's just the thing. Alexia didn't finish that sentence. It was something she was thinking about, but for now, she'd keep it to herself at least. But maybe she could bring in Sid someday. At least when she was ready to. I just need to know that you'll do this with me. Please, Sid. I know you don't like to try very hard. You have a humble attitude about yourself. Kind of annoying, to say the least. And also admirable, but I need you to try a little harder. Fine. You want me to try harder? I will. I will become your right-hand man in the Crimson Knights. But that's as far as I'm going to go. I really don't like the attention. It's annoying. It comes with a whole bunch of responsibility and headache, and it's just all too much. But I would be a terrible boyfriend if I didn't help you in your time of need. Alexia gave him a warm and comforting smile as she wrapped her arms around him tightly. For Kagenou, he liked being depended on in this manner. And this was just another benefit. Having the leader of the Crimson Knights in his back pocket, well, that was one benefit you can't really turn down. As far as other pockets, he had his hands in those too. A few cards in his deck just waiting to be played. But in the back of his head, he had a new target on his mind. Thomas Wayne Jr., the Owlman, leader of the Providence of Gotham, and member of the Justice League. Everything was happening through his machinations. And to get to him, he'd have to go through his lovely niece, Helena Wayne, the Huntress. But there was always looking on the bright side of things. If his investigation was going to go to the next level, then it was time to set his sights back on his home. Back to the Providence of Gotham. And to uncover the secrets left behind. The secrets that lie dormant in the shadows. This concludes The Eminence in Shadow, No More Heroes. What if Sid Kagenou was DeathStroke? Season 1, Part 8. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned tomorrow as we continue with the Eminence in Shadow, No More Heroes. What If Sid Kagenou Was DeathStroke, Season 1, Part 9. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.